A regular city council meeting, April 3rd, 2019 at 7:01. Do I have to hit this?
I don't know.
Okay, so invite you guys pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
roll call.
One more roll call. Mayor Copeland is absent. Tom Baylor.
Here.
Ken Jones is absent. Jeff Guard. Jeff, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, and you're kind of scratchy and broke up, but I'm here.
Okay. Melina Meyer
Here.
and Schaefer is absent. David Allison
Here.
and David Gleason.
Here.
That's a quorum of council.
Okay, and approval of regular,
Move to approve the agenda for April 3rd, 2019.
Second.
Voice
We
vote
don't,
or roll
yeah,
call?
just a voice on
right,
that.
voice vote on that. I'll say aye.
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 Those
All.
opposed? All right, disclosure of conflicts of interest and ex parte communications. Does anyone have conflict of interests or anything to disclose?
I would just say that I am also a PISWAC board member, and we are going to be talking about them a little bit in the ordinance, but I'm talking about it as representing Cordova, so I don't feel like I'm conflicted at all, but I just think I should say that.
Okay, and we kind of discussed that beforehand, and there's not a financial interest on your part, so I think we're good. Do you want to add anything to?
No, and the same goes for me. I'm the city's rep, and there's no financial interest, so I do not believe I have a conflict, but just putting it out there.
All right, thanks for disclosing that. And then we'll move on to communications by and petitions from visitors. We don't have any guest speakers tonight. So audience comments regarding any agenda items. You can come up to the mic here. We have a few people online. All right, it doesn't look like we have any audience comments tonight. So chairpersons and representatives of boards and commissions. CCMC, I believe, is having their meeting right now, so no representative from them. And school board?
Good evening. I'll start with the fun stuff. So students made it back from close-up. Sounds like they had a great trip, learned a lot, gave some presentations and debates. They did really well. Proud of them. We have a large group going to the Aurora Music Festival next week, and several of our students are going to be looking to compete at state after that. So very proud of them as well. A lot of really positive accomplishments still happening, even though we're at the end of the year and people are getting ready to be done. The school calendar is up for comment. We're going to be voting on a school calendar next week, but there has been a survey sent out, and you will see it in our board packet. It's sort of a last chance to make any comments on that for the upcoming year. So I encourage anyone who's interested or it affects to go ahead and weigh in. So on the not so fun stuff, obviously the governor's budget is affecting all of us. So what's going in our packet is an invitation for the city council to join us on a joint resolution opposing the governor's budget with specific reference to the amount of dollars it's going to take away or out of our community and the economic impact of sort of all of it. You know, the municipal revenue sharing, the bond debt reimbursement, all of it. So you will see that in our packet. It's an invitation. We're going to send it either on our own or we'd love to do it with the city. We want to give you a heads up before you saw it. And certainly if you have any questions about it, contact the superintendent. And it feels particularly pertinent, given the House Finance Committee's vote today to amend the House's budget to take away the school bond debt reimbursement and the forward funding of education. So it's getting a little bit down to the wire with that. Anyone who can weigh in, I think it would be worth our while. It looks like that's about a $900,000 hit for Cordova. And we are in the midst of both negotiations and budget planning as all of this is happening, so it's making it a little bit complicated. We're having a budget work session tomorrow at lunchtime, and certainly it's open to the public, and you're invited to come. We spent some time over the last week or two really looking at our numbers. It's pretty grim. As we've talked about here at this table, we have spent down our fund balance, as we've discussed with the city, and we're really kind of at the end of that. We're not kind of at the end of it, we are at the end of it. And it's painting a concerning picture. So I would love it to answer any questions that the city council has about that, or to invite you to our work sessions as we try and figure out how we're going to go forward.
All right, we'll start on the phone. Does anybody on the phone have any questions or comments for school board?
Yeah, Vice Mayor Meyer, I do have one question or clarification.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, Marv, when you said that the state today, the committee added into or modified the House budget to not do the school debt reimbursement, as I understood it, the only thing they voted on today was to extend the moratorium on future bond debt reimbursements through, any projects, the bond going out today, for example, won't be covered. But it didn't address the past, payments like we're getting from a bond that was passed during the time that moratorium was not in effect. Can you clarify that for us? Or
I can, and that was a question.
I don't want to yell to my legislators that they screwed that one up when they might not have screwed it up totally yet.
Right. Those were two separate amendments, and you're right. They voted on an amendment to extend the moratorium and approve that. They also voted on an amendment to delete forward funding of education and school bond debt reimbursement. So those were two separate amendments. The amendment about the school bond debt reimbursement passed 6-5.
Okay, I'll clarify that again. This is just committee too, so it's not a done deal yet.
Correct. It is just committee.
It's a good time to holler.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any comments from here? Go ahead, Baylor.
Is the WUI program, is that a function of the state? Somebody said that's getting cut too.
So my understanding is that the WWAMI program was on the chopping block. I don't know if that includes the WUI or not. And my understanding of the WUI program is that that's a program that's funded by the 5 states involved, not just Alaska.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, not seeing any more comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, it doesn't look like we have a student council representative tonight, so move on to approval of consent calendar.
Move to approve this consent calendar?
Second.
Okay, and can we do a roll call for that?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Forgot about that. On the consent calendar then, David Allison,
Yes.
Ann Schaefer is absent, Ken Jones is absent. Melina Meyer,
Yes.
David Gleason,
Yes.
Tom Baylor,
Yes.
Jeff Guard.
Yes.
The consent calendar is approved.
Okay, and then approval of minutes.
Move to approve the minutes of 3/6/19 regular city council meeting and the minutes of 3/20/19 regular council meeting.
Second.
You
Okay.
can do a
Any
voice
What?
after comments. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Is there any comments to your motion about your second? Anybody on the phone, any corrections? Okay, so we're just going to do a voice vote for that one.
So just say all those in
All
favor.
those in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay. Consideration of bids, it looks like we have one, the approval of reinstate employment agreement with Susan Bourgeois for the city clerk. We have a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second, sorry.
All right,
I'll second.
would you like to speak on your motion, Councilmember Gleason?
I think Susan's a great employee and we need to keep her.
All right, and how, Councilman Baylor?
No comment, we're good.
Okay. Anybody else on the phone? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and do a voice vote for that
I'll
one.
do a roll call on
That's
that
Roll
one.
call?
roll.
Yeah.
Okay. Do a roll
Um,
call?
David Allison,
Yes.
Melina Meyer,
Yes.
Ken Jones is absent. Jeff Guard,
Yes.
David Gleason,
Yes.
Tom Baylor,
Yes.
and Ann Schaefer is absent. Motion carries 5-0.
Reports of officers. The mayor put a contribute to Ed Zine. And that's all he left. He didn't leave anything else for me.
And I just wanted to comment that Kathy Sherman put that together and sent it to the legislature, and I don't know, possibly they'll send us something written up like this. I think that's what usually happens, so that was just a good job of Kathy to spend some time. She knew Ed well, I think, so it was a nice tribute.
And I would concur with that, and Ed did a lot of things for this community and a long history with it.
All right. And yes, thank you for writing that. It was well thought out and obviously from someone that knew everything that he did for this community. Manager's report?
You'll see that I've been sending you a lot of items from the Alaska Municipal League. They've been doing a pretty good synopsis of legislation and committee work that's been going forward. I too have been doing my fair share, a couple testimonies over at the LIO, and also sent you an email indicating that Representative Stutes and Senator Stevens are going to be here next Friday, the 12th, from 1:30 to 3. They will be in this room for a, I guess, they termed it a town hall meeting. Kathy Sherman will be putting out a press release here or some information very soon on that.
When is that again? Sorry.
The 12th,
Okay.
1:30 to 3. Going back to the resolution 419-6 on the consent calendar, I just wanted to make you aware that in this has been a more complicated process than we've normally participated in for exercises like this. As you know, this is an Alaska Shield exercise, which is a pretty big deal for us in particular because we get so much notoriety from both state emergency personnel and federal personnel in those exercises. In this case, we're going to be participating. On Saturday, we had 50 people in ammonia training here in town from all levels of government and agencies that were participating. So again, the notoriety, the financial impact. What we've done in past exercises is we've had the school district participate in terms of a class exercise with chaperones, the teachers. In that methodology, the school's liability insurance then protects students and teachers. In this exercise, they are not going to participate with us in this exercise. So we do not have, we cannot cover those volunteers in that way. So since we're having the U.S. Coast Guard and their extraordinarily trained rescue personnel here, I just wanted to let you know that I'm going to assign a number of city staff to be personnel on the Aurora on April 10th. They're going to be, that boat is going to be boarded by the MSRT team, and our choices are pretty limited in the personnel that, or the number of people that we can put on that boat. We do have the ability to put some other volunteers on there, and we're going to ask staff to volunteer. But just so you know, they will be city personnel on that boat, and they'll be covered by our workman's compensation and our liability insurance. That's the best opportunity for this exercise. In the future going forward, we hope to have a different methodology for this, but on the short notice that we're working with here, in order to get all the agreements done, all the waivers done, all of those things, we actually completed that process last Friday. So it's very short notice for us. So I hope to have about 20 of our city personnel, perhaps, on the Aurora as passengers to be liberated by the Maritime Security Response Team, just so you know.
What's that date again?
April 10th.
Okay.
I will be one of those. So we're kind of looking forward to that. That next week, if you look at the schedule, next week is a big week for us, and beginning Sunday with the potluck for the Coast Guard folks and city folks.
Right, any questions on for the manager about his report? Okay, we're gonna go to the city clerk.
So we are in the 2019 assessment appeal period still. It closes Friday at 5. So if anybody has any last minute appeals, get them in by 5 Friday. I think Tina said she has about 30 or so, which isn't a huge year. That's, a decent number. The assessor will be here the week of the 8th. So I think he'll actually be working on appeals starting on the 8th, Monday, and hope to get them all resolved. And if not, we'll have the Board of Equalization meeting on the 15th. So how that works is, he hopes to get as many as he can resolved, and then we'll create a packet and bring it all pretty much to the Board of Equalization meeting, and that's when you guys will hear from the assessor, we'll hear from the appellant, we'll see the materials in front of you, the card maybe, and what the appeal was, and then make your decisions. And I guess that's about it. I've been working hard with Holly, which has been nice, working on that ordinance with Dean and Holly, and Leif was helpful on that too, so that went pretty smoothly. Of course, we'll get there in a minute, so we'll see how smoothly. That's it. I can answer any questions, and thank you for extending my contract for 3 years. I appreciate that. That'll be another fun 3 years.
Any questions for the clerk or comments? Nope. Okay, so we're gonna move on to correspondence. We have 2 included in the packet here. One with the Alaska Municipal League. It looks like we are one of the signers on that one, so it's included. And then also one from PISWAC regarding that fish tax. And I think we got a couple others that missed the deadline for this. So we probably got those through email. Go ahead, Councilman Baylor.
Yeah, I just appreciate ML and our mayor getting involved with that, and then the letters that we got from the processors as well as from PISWAC. And your correspondences are read. They're not always brought up in a meeting, but for anybody who wants to write us stuff, we do pay attention, we do read it, and we do take it into consideration, and thank you for them.
Any other comments about the correspondence?
We did receive an updated AML letter, the same one with the signature block, and all of the signatures are full on that back page, because some of those were missing when we signed it, but they're all full now.
Yeah, I was doing minutes and I noticed that we said we'd put it in, so I asked Alan for it, but then we got the nicer looking copy after, so I'll pass that around. I'll email it to you guys.
Thank you. All right, so ordinances and resolutions. We have ordinance 1174 on page 28 of the regular council meeting packet. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, enacting Cordova Municipal Code, Chapter 5.41 raw fish tax, the implementation of a voter approval 0.5% tax on the value of raw fish landed in the City of Cordova. First reading.
Move to approve.
Second.
Would you like to speak on your motion, Councilman or Gleason?
Just what we talked about in the work session. We talked about a lot. So I imagine Holly has a lot of stuff to do before we can, or do we have to talk about it again? You kind of know what we want, right?
Well, we need to get it on the record.
Oh, so I guess the exemption for PISWAC, the exemption for VFDA on cost recovery fish and raceway sales would be one. The other one was,
So if you want to make that amendment, I believe they have language that we can use. And then the amendment would need a second.
well, that's just,
Should we do it
do we
that
have
way?
to do them all at once or one at a time?
One at a time.
Go ahead.
I think it might be easier to put the amendment on the floor and then we can talk about it. You guys can share the intent of the amendment. That's always a very good thing to have in the future because the industry changes and then people are looking at your minutes to determine what the scope of the tax is. That, that's not uncommon. So I think even though the discussion was pretty robust in the work session, I would reiterate your amendment and your reasons and then kind of move through that quickly and then we can put the language forward. The language was very simple. It's just an exemption. You add an exemption for hatcheries subject to Alaska Statute 16.10 or regulated by 16.10.
Do you want to make that motion for the
So
amendment?
just,
Here,
yeah, I do,
I
actually.
could tell you exactly how to say it. I would say amend the ordinance by adding 5.41.040B, the sale of raw fish harvested and sold by hatcheries as defined in Alaska Statute 16.10.
Do we have a second for that amendment?
Well, the clerk can't make amendments.
No, but I mean,
Can I say so moved? So moved?
So moved.
That's a lot for an old guy to
How about
remember.
we just, I'd move to make an amendment to the, for an exemption for PISWAC and the details to be.
Would you like to use the language that the clerk stated?
I would.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second.
Second.
Motion and a second. Do you want to speak to your amendment?
No, I'll refer to Mr. Gleason. He seems to be
All
in
right.
charge of this very well.
So the intent on that is to keep our processors on a level playing field in the bid process. Simple enough.
All right. Anybody on the phone have any discussion or comments on the amendment that's before us?
Yeah, Vice Mayor, this is Allison.
Go ahead.
I'll support this at least on first reading and probably for the first year. But just let me make a few comments first regarding the reason I would be on the line. I've never really appreciated the fact that PISWAC and VFDA can set their budget at whatever number they want to set their budget at and are guaranteed by the state to catch as many fish as long as the fish come back. But prior to any commercial guy going out and getting common property, the only thing that really saves them in my mind is the fact that it is run by a board of commercial fishermen that have a vested interest in fishing themselves as well. So that said, I'll support it, but I've never have really appreciated that any organization can set their budget and then go out and get as much money as they need to cover that budget and not really have to do too much conserving on either end. So anyway, that's my comment. I will support it at this time.
Okay, Councilman Guard, do you have any discussion?
I'm in favor of the motion. Give me a chance to vote, I'll vote yes.
All right, and I have similar thoughts that Councilman Allison has. I would support it for the time being to get it going. I think we have a lot of different aspects of this that need to be worked out, and to start off with, I think we can make that exemption for the hatcheries. There's already listed in the state, has state statute for it, so I think it would be a good one. So since we have some people on the phone, let's go ahead and do a roll call of the amendment.
I would just,
Oh,
my,
sorry, yeah.
I would just ask staff, do you have the wording that you need? You're clear on what we're.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other discussion before we do a roll call on the amendment? Okay, roll call for the amendment?
So on the amendment, Melina Meyer
Yes.
and Schaefer is absent. David Gleason
Yes.
and Jones is absent. David Allison,
Yes.
Jeff Guard,
Yes,
and Tom Baylor.
Yes.
The amendment passes 5-0.
I would also like to make an amendment that we put the collection of the tax at once a year, the appropriate date that the staff could work with. That work?
Did you make a motion?
I did.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes, so we have a
second.
motion, we have a motion and a second, so the discussion is on amending the collection of the tax to once a year rather than the monthly payments.
Right.
Would you like to speak to your motion?
No, actually, I would prefer to Dave. He seems to be on top. Is Dave? Dave. Not me. The other.
That just, once a year is a lot easier for those guys.
I'm sorry,
so-
Dave Allison is who I meant. but-
Oh, I'm sorry. Dave.
Yeah, I couldn't
Well,
hear
the
your name,
motion,
Dave.
seconder. Do you have anything else do you want to continue?
I just said it, so that's
Okay.
it. Yep.
Anybody on the phone, discussion on the amendment?
Yeah, I'd just be repeating what I said in the open session, that, you know, it's really easy for all of these guys, everybody, including the direct marketers, to, you know, file that form once a year at the same time or prior to when their state form is due, and it pretty much mirrors that with a different rate. So it should be pretty darn easy for them to do, and shouldn't be too much of a grind for them. So I think that, and the fact that we're not going to need that money but once a year, we should be good.
Fine, Vice Mayor. After council makes their comments, I do have one more comment to
Okay.
add on this.
Do you want to do it, should we do it now or after the discussion?
When they've all made their comments.
Okay.
that'll be fine.
Councilman Guard,
Just try.
and then I'll go.
no comment?
I guess my opinion about doing the once a year is I'm not opposed to it. I think that we could do, I guess I would rather see that amendment on the second reading when we have some other options. So I'd be voting no on the amendment today, but I'd be open to it on the second reading. I think I just need to get a little more familiar with all the different fish taxes and when times they do filings and how we can work with that. We'll go with the manager and then the city attorney has a comment to make as well.
This is adding C, number C, to 5.41.040. And then do we have to amend the language in 5.41.090 and specify under remittance of the tax? So we're going to have to change that language as well, correct? But that's automatic?
Yes, those are, we can make,
We just insert that based upon C? Okay,
and you'll bring a substitute ordinance back
okay.
for the next one. So those small, also non-substantial changes will, because that will have to change. So, and with an amendment like this, depending on, I mean, I have a few comments, so it may reflect more language changes to get to that place. If that's someplace the council goes, then we can do that. Staff and I and administration, we can make that happen in probably a better way, not on the floor.
Okay.
So make an amendment. So the amendment should direct us to change the return date if that's what you guys decide to do, and then we will bring back a substitute that does that in a way that is best,
And I think
best interest. But I do
it was
want
made
to,
that way as that amendment. The first
think it
amendment was
was.
very specific as to what to change. The second amendment seemed to be more general, let us bring it back. Am I right, Tom?
Pardon me?
Mr. Baylor?
I'm sorry.
On that amendment that you made, you were good with staff wording it a certain,
Correct,
the best way they can and bring it back that way?
correct.
Okay.
The intent was for once a year, and the other one was,
so the once a year, I did want to give you more information. I did a little bit of research so that I could give you a area-specific response to the tax returns that the state files. So under Alaska statute 4375-55, which is how the state tells the processors how they'll file the fisheries business tax, which is direct to the processor. So it's a different tax. But what they need to do is they file an annual return if they can show that the amount of so they have to show the amount of lienable real property is 3 times the amount of the tax they anticipate collecting. So they have to give a projected value and then show 3 times the amount for lienable real property. And if they can't do that, and they have to make that statement under oath, both for the amount and for the property, if they can't do that, then they can pay monthly and file a monthly return, and then also pay a bond of $50,000 or provide proof, instead of paying the bond, provide proof that they have $100,000 worth of real property. So I'm not saying that you want to require that, but I did want to make it clear that that is, I think, why we see that discrepancy. And I don't know this for a fact, but between the municipal monthly returns and the state's annual returns, because the state is creating, they're creating security for their tax recovery. Now, again, you have a small market, you know your market, you know your processors and their, so I'm not, this is still remains a policy decision. I just didn't want you to not have that information when making a determination. So.
Any more discussion on the amendment to change it to once a year? Okay, so we'll do a roll call vote on this amendment.
Okay.
But, clarification, this amendment is directing staff to come up with the language.
And
That's how I thought, yes.
Okay.
for an
Instead of
annual
being-
return that mirrors the state, right? Because I think
Well-
Do we want
you
it to
don't
mirror
want
the
a
state, or
date.
we?
you don't want
want
a
it on
different
one.
date than the
I'll leave that up to
state, right?
staff. It's appropriate.
Okay. Is that clear to staff?
Yeah, I think we got it.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Jeff Guard,
Yes.
Dave Gleason,
Yes.
Melina Meyer,
Yes.
Tom Baylor,
Yes.
and Schaefer is absent. David Allison.
Yes.
Okay, that amendment carries 5-0.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, so now the discussion is on the original, or is on the ordinances with our 2 amendments.
I've got
made.
another amendment to make.
What's that?
I have another amendment to make.
Okay, Councilman Baylor.
I would like to amend it, or add the option for direct marketers to pay a flat fee in lieu of the tax, and that amount to be determined later by staff or this council. In other words, I want to give the option of that flat fee for some of the smaller marketers.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for this amendment.
Well, I think Mr. Guard spoke to it a little bit. Sometimes you're trying to chase these things down, you might spend more money. And then also the fact that maybe some of these smaller marketers are more likely to skip out and not pay the tax. So if you get it up front, and then I think we can see how that goes after a couple of years, we can make adjustments on what that fee would be. But it would give us a better option, I think, to include everybody.
Okay, Councilmember Gleason, anything to add about the amendment?
I would just say I think that they would jump at the chance to pay a flat fee and not have the headaches of trying to add up all their individual fish sales. So I'm in favor of that motion.
Anybody on the phone discussion?
Yeah, Vice Mayor.
Go ahead, Councilman Allison.
Yeah, I guess I'm not so much in favor of this. If we're gonna go to once a year filing and we make it around time that their forms don't make them late until after their forms are due with the state. They all have to have that crap up for the state anyway. They gotta pay their raw fish tax based on the area that they processed or delivered it or where they sold it. So it's all already done for one organization. Just the same numbers will be available. They won't have to do any extra work for it. They could, and depending on what that flat fee is, maybe it would be a good deal to only have to pay $200 on a year that they catch 1 million pounds of fish, but not so good if they have a year like last year where they didn't catch anything and have to pay on it. So anyway, I'm not in favor of this amendment at this time.
Councilmember Guard.
I'm kind of with Councilmember Allison. We've got a lot of variables here with directing staff to develop language and verbiage for it. So if we do come up with the once a year that we're paying, payments are required right after state payments are made, I don't see where filing is going to be an onerous process. It won't be a running deal. It'll already be stuff they've got to do for the state. And if it's not, I think we're making a strange deal. So I think we need a little bit more solidified before I be in favor of this.
Okay, I'm going to make my comments. I agree with the last two comments that were made. I think it's kind of jumping ahead. I think we have a couple of amendments that the staff needs to change. And if this is a route that we want to go, I think we need to have some numbers to figure out what it is a little bit more before we come up with a flat fee. And so I would not be in favor of the amendment at the time, but maybe in the future, it's something that I'd be willing to address again. Any more comments on this amendment?
Yeah, I guess the final comment is the amendment set an option. So, and that my target was the small people that are selling 5,000 pounds or 6,000 pounds. Give them an option for that. And then they can come in and show their past sales, the future sales. We can base it on that. But I think to have some of these smaller outfits that are just getting started to do all this unnecessary paperwork. So that's why I would be in favor of it. Thank you.
I guess I have a question because a couple of these are amendments without actual wording. So if you're proposing it as an option, if the flat fee ends up being a lot less than what they would pay if they were to report it, or if it was a lot more, I guess I just don't know how far off we're going to be from year to year or what that fee is. So I guess that's why I don't feel comfortable voting on directing staff, because I think it's a little too vague, maybe.
All right, that's fine.
But I don't know if there's any clarification, if I'm not
Yeah,
understanding it
well, I guess
correctly.
I'm just trying to capture the small processor, or
Mhm.
I keep calling processor, sorry, marketer that are just getting started and are selling a few thousand pounds here and there. Obviously, if someone's selling 1 million pounds, then that's a big operation. But
Mhm.
the mom and pop little operations, and then for staff has to go back and check their fish tickets and hunt them down and get them, if they could just come in, much the same way we do our tax cap. You know, you don't want to pay your taxes when you're building, you get a building permit, you pay your tax cap, it's all taken care of, so. Anyway, that's all I
Okay.
had.
Any other discussion on the amendment? I guess we'll do,
Would you understand how to write
Yeah.
that if that amendment passes? Because I'm not 100% sure on what dollar amount to use for the flat amount. That was giving us a little leeway to research it as well? Okay.
It was.
Because I think the one thing I would say is I think a change in that structure I think I'd want a separate provision really governing direct marketers, because we are already, they are different, yet we encompass them in the code generally. But if we're going to then change their pay structure and the return structure, then I think having a provision in 541 that's just really specific to the direct marketers, both the definition of who falls within that and how they file their tax returns and when, would be, which is a little bit more detailed. So but I think that it sounds like your amendment is really asking us to, in a substitute ordinance, bring back that provision and
So you're saying it kind of complicates things.
so, and, well, no, I mean, I think we can draft it, and then it is an amendment that you can, if you have a substitute ordinance and none of the changes, the amendments in that ordinance are substantive, and when I say substantive, they aren't substantial changes from the ordinance that require a reintroduction of the ordinance, then at the next meeting, you have the ability to, look at it and say, you know what, this is not going to work. This is premature. We're not ready for this. We need to see some numbers, get a sense of our volume. And then you can make a motion to amend to repeal that section. So I have no problem with
And it
doing
would pass
that.
on
I
second
mean-
reading, okay, if they repealed a section that we then put in to a substitute ordinance?
Yes, so long as I don't have, the one thing that I'm not, if I draft the section and find that I have to now change something in the code to put it into effect that is a substantial change, and I don't want to foreclose that from happening. That might happen, because I just am not, I'm on the.
You'd have to
sort of-
comprehensively
Yes, I
look
have
at
to,
it.
I have to look at it in a quiet room, not on the radio.
I don't know, I guess because this kind of affects my decision about the timeline of getting these changed, because I would like to see this as a second reading on our next regular meeting. Would all these amendments be able to be drafted by our next meeting?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Even
and
the-
I would say, if I think that that provision requires a substantial change, I'll make sure that I mean, you could even, you can request the amendment, so long as
It
the
doesn't
language
require another
proposed by
first
staff
reading.
does not, yes. And you could do that, and then if we get there, then we can just report back and tell you why it's not in there. That's,
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
that's.
I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that clarified things a little bit for me. Any other discussion on this amendment?
Madam Mayor?
Go ahead, Councilman Guard.
Hey, I know that we're trying to make this as easy on everybody as we can, and that's good. But we may be bending over far enough backwards that we're cutting off our nose to spite our face here. We're trying to make it less complicated, and we're making it more complicated. If we go to the once-a-year reporting and the once-a-year payment schedule, and we make it due after the state's reporting period, this is going to basically be the same information to fill into a form that they're already going to have developed for the state. So I don't think that we're making this onerous. It's far enough after the season that everybody's going to have time to get caught up on paperwork and stuff. We're through the crazy time of the year. So I don't see that we're really gaining the benefits by doing this that we're trying to get. I think we got what we need to cover this when we talked about going to once a year payments and reporting and having it done right after the state's done. So I think we've covered all this with that.
Okay, city manager, did you have something you wanted to add?
Well, it seems to me on a flat fee that that certainly has advantages for smaller direct marketers. I can clearly see that. But I think on our end, the auditing of that is the difficulty for us, because the auditing is, if we want to have an audit provision, then that provides the most time-consuming thing for us. Because at some point, we're going to have to retrace, we're going to have to go back, and we're going to have to say, we required a $200 fee from this direct marketers without any ability to reconcile with that with the catch. Because they don't have to, unless they have to turn in tickets, or they still have to do that, because we're going to have to go back and audit. So if we're going to collect a fee, we might as well be basing it upon a consistent receipt process that we're going to have, and collect a fee based upon a percentage of that.
All right, any other discussion on the amendment for the direct marketers, small operations? All right, seeing none, since we have a couple people on the phone, we'll do a roll call vote.
Ann Schaefer is absent. Tom Baylor.
Yes.
Jeff Guard.
No?
Melina Meyer.
No?
David Allison.
No.
Ken Jones is absent. David Gleason.
Yes.
So this amendment fails 2-3.
Okay, and now we're back to the ordinance 1174 with the 2 amendments.
Call for the question and original motion.
All right,
Object.
I think he
Well, I-
just wants to speak. He objected to the calling the question. He just wants more
and then we
discussion.
do discussion.
Discussion.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Councilmember Allison.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a question to Holly or somebody there. I apologize, I don't have my iPad here in front of me right now and no ability to look at this ordinance while we're talking about it, but I just want to be sure that we're not saying fish ticket price or something that would indicate an initial price only and not any retros, because all that's required by the state on a fish ticket is a price. So sometimes a fisherman's group or processor could put a penny a pound and decide in October that they're gonna pay 30 cents a pound. They're giving an advance and then they're retroing to the actual price. And I think that's why the state actually waits until the end of March, because most of those retros, if there are any, are done throughout the winter or in the early spring. So I just want to be sure we're covering ex-vessel value in the end, so that it's the same as, they pay their enhancement tax on any retros, they pay the marketing tax on any retros, and I think they need to pay this tax on any retros as well. So that I don't know that it's in there or not, or it needs to be in there or not, but if that's something we could look at before the next reading, I'd want to make sure that we're covering everything there.
And I can speak to that pretty quickly. I think the way we've defined sales price actually mirrors in some ways the sales price that is included for the state. And just in defining what the sale price is, not who it applies to, but the sale price means the total consideration in money, credit, rights to or to other property. And it also includes bonuses that are paid later or any indirect consideration. And then we define indirect consideration so that we're sure that we're capturing all of those discounts that may apply for fuel, supplies, ice, gear, handling fees, tender fees. And this language and also the structure is something that is familiar because it's something that the state has given us the language, and they've sort of vetted this language and used it. For the state, what happens is you file a bonus return at the end of the year. So as soon as you receive a bonus or indirect consideration, then you would file the return at the, within a month. I think it's, the 15th day or whatever of the month after you receive. Or for them, because it's a tax on the processors that after they pay that consideration. So the answer is yes, those are all included in here, and it is not based just on the cash value listed on the fish ticket. And that's incorporated in.
Thank you for that clarification,
Minutes.
Holly. Thank you. I'm done.
Anybody else, a discussion on the ordinance?
Call for the question.
All right, go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Okay, on 1174. Ken Jones is absent. David Gleason,
Yes.
Melina Meyer,
Yes.
Tom Baylor,
Yes.
David Allison,
Yes.
Ann Schaefer is absent. Jeff Guard.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Hey, Chair. Before we make the next motion, I didn't realize this, I don't think it's a conflict of interest. I just want to throw it out there that my wife does serve on the Cordova Telephone Board, and they are the bidder on this project, but in no way is there any financial gain for either of us. So, but
I
putting it
think
out there for
that's
public.
fine. We
input.
luckily have our attorney here, so.
Cordova, what's their corporate
On the
structure?
next item.
Councilman Allison, go ahead.
Yeah, just one more comment. I think we need to look at getting mics that's into our lapels or something with a mute button on them or something, because nobody there uses the mic very well. I can hear Jeff Guard just fine because he's on the phone, but everybody else, I have a hard time hearing half the time.
Okay, I'll try to tell everyone to speak into the mics and get everyone to do that.
All right, I put a motion on the table. I would move to approve the proposal for Cordova Telecom Cooperative for lots 3 and 4, block 6, the original town site.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do you want to speak to your motion, Councilmember Baylor?
Other than that, I think it's a real strong plan, and I really appreciate the front facade that they're going to put on there. Kind of blends in with the old town, so I would vote in favor of this.
Okay. Councilmember Gleason, do you have anything to add while you speak into the mic?
I'd just echo Tom's comments. The proposal's pretty cool, and if anybody can get it done, it's Jeremiah.
Anybody on the phone has any comments on this proposal for Lot 3 and 4 and Block 6, the original town site?
Councilmember Allison here. Yeah, I think that, it's a good plan. CTC is a good corporate citizen in Cordova, and they abide by all their liabilities, and I think that's probably a better option to take care of that facility. So I think it's a good plan. I'm all for it.
Councilman Guard, do you have anything to add?
I'd like to echo what everybody else said before, and enthusiastic of the plan. I've just got a few questions. I'm not sure exactly how this will affect us property tax roll-wise. I know we've got a lot of property in Anchorage or in Cordova that's tax exempt because of ownership status, and I believe our co-ops are also in a tax exempt status, but I don't know where that puts us with the incubator and other stuff they've got involved in it. So I've just got some questions, but I'm excited to see the proposal on a whole.
Is that something that staff can comment on, the
I can.
property tax status?
Before we talk about this, I actually want to go back to the conflict of interest you raised. The cooperative is not a not-for-profit, it's a cooperative owned by the members. And I wasn't familiar with their structure. So while I have no doubt you do not have a substantial financial interest in reality under the law because your wife is on the board and therefore.
No, she works, she's employed by them.
No,
Oh, what am I thinking?
My wife is on
Sorry,
the board.
sorry.
So she receives, so how do they structure, I guess it's a discussion you need to have as opposed to a nonprofit volunteer board position. Is it the same? How does a cooperative work? Because it is a for-profit, but it's a co-op. So we have to address it because there's a financial difference.
So I guess the difference would be if she's a volunteer board member or paid board member.
Correct, if you don't receive any compensation.
no, they receive compensation.
So that would be a difference. So I would say that you should abstain or, from participating because that would qualify as a substantial financial conflict of interest or could under your code.
I guess for my clarification, when they're compensated, does it matter whether it's just a per diem compensation or is there a distinction between that for financial interest? Just for
I don't think, so most communities will will define substantial financial interest. I don't believe we do. Yeah, and so I can take a moment and go to your code and see if you've added something you didn't used to. But I can check and see if you have a number. If you have a number, then we can look at the number. If you don't have a number, which you didn't use to.
No, we don't have a
Okay.
dollar amount, if that's what you mean.
Yes, that's what I mean. And so then we look to case law and then we don't really
Well,
have direction, but what we know is if she's serving as a board of director, is it a nominal stipend?
yes.
Okay,
And-
so it's
and-
not compensation, it's,
So let me make it easier. I'll withdraw my motion, and then we will get clarification for that on another time. I think, will that work?
Easier that way.
All right, so drawing your motion, do we have a motion on, so we'll have to bring this back up.
We'd have
for-
to have the second.
Yes.
I'll make
just-
a motion.
yes, I think.
So Allison, we have a motion and we have a second here
And
with.
with
Jason.
that, I will just declare a perceived conflict of interest on this vote, and I will not be voting for the record.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Gleason?
I was trying to get you before you
Oh.
redid that, so my wife actually works
Oh.
there.
Okay. So
But I don't see how.
do we lose, we may be able to, so let's march through yours. Because because that one is, is going to be more definitive. Your wife receives a paycheck from the co-op, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so what we're gonna do is, you're gonna ask yourself, if you receive financial compensation, is it substantial to you? Would it, and I would ask that you look at an amount of $500 because that's the amount I have seen matter in cases. So again, we don't have a bright line rule here, but if her compensation exceeds $500,
Depending on the amount of
Annually.
meetings, yes, it would.
Does this require 3 votes or 4?
I was just gonna ask that.
Simple majority.
Can
I
3 vote on it? Because that's not a
think. No,
quorum.
yeah, right, we won't have a quorum able to vote.
So
that
would,
Doesn't work.
is this
There's-
time sensitive? Could we
I was just
refer
gonna
it back
refer
to
that-
staff
I
so that
would
we can
move-
do it
yeah.
next time?
Table it to the next meeting. Table it to the next meeting.
Right.
sorry,
I
guys.
don't know if you guys can move it, so
You can move it.
I can move it to refer it back to staff, and I'll need a second. Someone on the phone? To refer
Art
to
or
staff?
Allison, will you?
Second?
Thank you.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Yeah. Can they vote on referring?
You
it?
can vote on that motion.
No.
Okay,
Are we good?
yeah.
Okay, so we will not be talking about this now. We will be going to
Pending agenda.
pending agenda, calendar, and elected and appointed officials list.
Hey, as chair.
Go ahead, Councilmember Baylor.
I've had a conversation with the mayor before he went on on his trip, and I'm assuming he's going to put this on the next agenda, but a couple of things I'd like to see come back, and one is the UBS, more information. Quite frankly, I think all we got was an infomercial out of them, and I started to ask some questions, but we ran out of time. So I think we need more information, and I could submit some questions to the mayor for that. And then perhaps even a thought of looking at other companies to handle that fund, do some comparisons. I guess I would ask all my councilmen, do you realize what we pay them, how we pay them? Is that pay after their 3% return or before their 3%? There's a lot of questions. So that was one thing. And the other was the hospital. I believe you spoke to that too, a meeting with the hospital, get some, either with the administrator and the board or however they choose.
So the CCMC joint meeting is number 7 on our future agenda items. So I believe that should be coming up. I think it's scheduling with CCMC is where we're at right now.
Yeah, and they
waiting to
have a
get
meeting right now, so.
Yeah, they're in a meeting tonight, and they'll give us a date for the meeting that we can have with them.
I gave them a bunch of option dates, so I'm hoping Scott will get back to me with the one that works.
So hopefully we can get an email soon about when that meeting will be scheduled for.
Yeah.
And
So,
so in the-
and so Tom brought up the UBS thing, and I just either need one of you guys to second it, or if you've spoken to the mayor and he said he's going to put it on, that will work also. I do know that I gave Buck a whole bunch of research and history on asset allocation resolutions that we used to do annually, and he's going to have one for the next meeting so that you guys will set an asset allocation that you want for the next year.
And I am preparing all of that information for you. Other competing firms, how they collect their fees, what their fees are, what their rates are, what their return rates are. I'm getting some comparisons for you, but I don't really think I need a motion to do that. I think I'm already prepared to do that, and we're working on that.
that'll probably be like a work session before a meeting.
Well, I think we should incorporate
just
it into
emails
some
back.
kind of formal business, because at some point you need to give me direction how you want that to work. Do you want us to rebid the service? Do you want to set some, allocation rates, those kinds of things? Just so I have direction, make sure I'm compliant.
So you'll bring it as an agenda item?
I will.
Report with an agenda item, okay.
Thank you. That's all I had.
Anybody else on the phone that has anything to add to our agenda or comments about any of them?
One thing.
Councilmember Gleason?
Clay's not here. I was hoping to wait till he got back, but I think we should maybe put it to the rest of council if they want to do it. Have a meeting with ADF and G on the financial impacts, economic impacts of, decisions that they make on our fisheries. They are supposed to have those things for the Board of Fish, and I would love to hear what they've got to say about that, especially relating to like our crab fishery and our gillnet fishery. I think that they would like to do a few things that they can't do, and maybe if we could get together with them and, put some of these points to some of the other areas that are managing our fisheries, it might carry some weight.
Okay, so do we have, we'll probably need another person to second that, and were you
Yeah, I'll
thinking like
second
a presentation or in the work session?
Yeah, where we could just talk to each other and ask questions about stuff like that, because currently, well, I don't want to get into it too much here, but just the crab fishery's a tough one right now because they've got such a small area they're fishing. They're refusing to test fish other areas. Last year, they did their test fishing on the grounds that the commercial guys had already fished
So we
Not
want
sure
to, we
about
want to
that
get a
move.
meeting together to,
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, anybody else have anything to add to the future agenda items? Or was that clear for the clerk for right now?
Yeah,
Okay,
I have that.
should check first before we move on.
Thank you, thank you.
Nobody else has anything. I remembered that we talked about having an urban planning committee when we were talking about the bears. It's a while back, but as the weather's gotten a little bit nicer out, I kind of thought that maybe we should have another discussion about whether we want to implement an urban planning that was suggested by the Fish and Game biologists to talk about the trash and best practices and maybe some pamphlets and stuff. I don't know if that's something staff's working on internally, but yeah.
So no, I am not working on an urban planning committee. That would be, I assume, something that would come from you all. We are expecting the bear dumpster lids next week. Charlotte and I have been talking since that meeting, and we have developed a few things. We will be developing, like, I don't know exactly what to call it, so I'm going to call it propaganda on how the bear dumpster lids work, and if you don't shut them, they don't work. You know, and things like that, how they work, how they're going to be distributed, try to pump it up before the season starts. There will be all bear dumpster lids on all dumpsters. We also have developed a little, I call it text if the dumpster's full. So we created a sign, we have a phone, it has a number, and it says, text this number text North Harbor dumpster if it's full. So that we're not letting dumpsters sit with full of stuff and then, you know, stuff's coming out on the ground. We are also looking at some of the areas where, like, trailer courts, places where there's a large amount of trash and they can just, you know, run down the line and chow down at getting some dumpsters put into those places. So we are working on things, but we as a staff are not working. I should say I, as a staff, is not
Okay.
working on an urban planning committee.
Well, it sounds like it still keep going. I guess I just brought it up because it was
Oh, yeah.
brought up to maybe have an urban planning, but we're hopefully just doing it in staff. So it sounds like that work has continued. Maybe we could have a presentation before
When we get
summer
the-
happens so we can get the word out about.
Oh yeah, when we get the
Everything.
dumpster lids
Mhm.
in and get them in place and we pull something together, we're gonna do the e-news, the webpage, the newspaper. I'll do a presentation here. Charlotte does the educational bear talks. She's gonna incorporate it into those. So the idea is to pump it up as much as we can prior to, you know, the big,
Prior to the first sighting of a bear. Anyone
Well,
seen one yet?
I don't know if we'll make the first sighting because
We're
that could happen
preparing
any day.
instructional and informational materials.
All right.
propaganda.
And I
That
don't think
works.
we needed to.
Does that have a negative connotation? Maybe. Okay.
Okay, anything else anybody wants to add before we go to audience
Go to who?
audience
Well, I was
participation?
just gonna-
Anybody left
Nobody there?
by the window?
All
Got a
right.
couple by the window.
Oh, we do.
He's not
All right.
audience.
It works.
I live here, I pay taxes. Chris Bowen, 607 Birch Street. I just wanted to say it's good to have Dave on board and welcome Tom back. And then for the Ed Zine thing, he was a real icon to the community. He helped me out when I first moved here, helped me get my start. He did a lot for the community, and it's sad to see him go. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, council comments. We'll start on the phone. Councilmember Allison?
Yeah, hi, Selena, hang on.
We can move to guard. You want?
Yeah, just give me a minute, yeah.
Okay, we'll come back to you. Councilmember Guard?
Just like to thank everybody for their comments and thought. I'd like to congratulate our vice mayor on her first meeting well run. And I'd like to thank Councilmember Allison or not Allison, but Gleason, for his first meeting of participation here, and it's been well enjoyed. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Baylor?
Nope, you caught me up with it. Yeah, couple comments. One is shout out to Dave Romhilt. They're getting the old library museum building facade looking very good, and that was something I was always strong on, our infrastructure and having it look good downtown. And I think with the addition of the telephone company doing that building, that does a lot for downtown. Also, we, in our construction business today, we ended up with a water issue, and Joel was very quick to respond, did a great job, and appreciate those guys. They're real easy to get along with, and they do a good job, and I appreciated that. And good job running the meeting. Thank you.
Councilmember Gleason?
Just good job on your meeting there, and I'll just correct Jeff, this is my second meeting.
All right, and yeah, we'll just kind of work through this fish tax. I spent a long time just reading it, try to really understand it. It's different than the state one. That's a whole other trying to understand how that one works too. So I think the amendments that we made were some good ones, and the CTC and CEC joint effort. I know we'll discuss that in the next one, but I like that they kind of are combining efforts and getting something in to help with Main Street. So thanks for hanging in there with me. So next one is executive session.
Well, maybe
Right.
back to Mr. Allison.
Oh, can I
Oh,
do my
yeah.
comment now?
Yeah, Allison, sorry.
No worries. I'm finishing up my dialysis for today, and it takes a blood pressure about 7 times right here at the end, and I can't bend my arm to get the phone close enough to my face when it's taking it, so I apologize for that. I just have a couple comments. The first one is I'd really like to look into some other kind of mic that can stay close to our faces, or we can put rubber bands around our neck to tie it to the end of that mic, because it is really hard. Anybody who's ever been on the phone, I'm sure, knows the same thing. But if you're not using that mic, we have an awful time hearing you, and doesn't allow us to participate very well if we can't hear what you're saying. That said, I'd like to echo Councilmember Guard's comments on Vice Mayor Meyer doing an excellent job tonight. Appreciate you stepping in there and filling in and running a good meeting. Thank you.
All right, thank you, and thanks for being able to call in. Appreciate that. Executive session?
Yeah, you need a motion on that?
Yes.
I lost my place, I would give it to you.
And
What
then
is it,
also-
for matters, help me out there.
Just read it
So-
pretty
Number
much.
one, for matters of immediate knowledge of which would clearly have an adverse effect upon the finance of the government. I move we go into executive session.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Nope, get them on the phone.
And then maybe we can just recess to clear the room.
So we'll recess until we can clear the room.
Thank you.